director of Sunseed The Journey, and today's host, Amritat Cohen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to our Sunseed Wisdom Talks. I'm Amritat Cohen, your host for today, and director of the movie Sunseed The Journey. This is Wisdom Talk number 11 in our series of enlightening discussions with some of the great thought leaders of today. And we have no exception today. We are graced with the presence of Jonathan Granoff, known the world over as a peace activist, to discuss really some pressing issues of our time, including how we can use our own inner search to affect the outward world conditions. Before we begin, I just want to remind all of our audience that you can see all of our past Wisdom Talks. We have some great talks you can check out on our website at sunseed.org/Wisdom Talks. And while you're there, you can also take a look at my movie, Sunseed The Journey. And you can also, we hope, visit our bazaar, because there you have some great Sunseed lifestyle merchandise, and the clothing and the merchandise there actually helps us to support these free and ongoing wisdom talks and many more events, which you're going to hear about a little later on the talk today. For the program today, Jonathan and I will have a chat for about 30 minutes, and then we would love to take some of your questions. So you'll see there's a chat function on the page if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. And if you're on Twitter, or if you don't have the chat, you can tweet us with the hashtag WTXI. WTXI. And after the questions, we have a special treat from Jonathan to lead us in a meditation. So now it's really my great pleasure to introduce Jonathan Granoff. He's become a dear friend, really an amazing, enlightening mentor on so many issues. And Jonathan, hi, it's really great to have you with us today.
Thank you very much.
He's a senior disciple of the great Sufi master Guru Bawa Muhyiddin, and he has and Jonathan really, as you'll hear, has a unique gift of blending the heart of a Sufi mystic with many extraordinary activities for social justice and protecting our planet. Jonathan is president of the Global Security Institute, which was founded by Mikhail Gorbachev and former California Senator Alan Cranston to rid the world of nuclear weapons. Jonathan is a respected attorney, a screenwriter, an international peace advocate, and he serves on numerous governing and advisory boards. He's such a busy guy. Really, we're so fortunate to have him today, including the Lawyers Committee on Nuclear Policy, the Jane Goodall Institute, the United Nations NGO Committee on Peace and Security, and he was nominated in 2014 for the Nobel Peace Prize. Jonathan, welcome back to Wisdom Talks. This is the third time we've had you. Your focus for over 20 years has been working on many levels to stop nuclear arms proliferation. How did you get started in that?
Okay. I was working in Congress for a congressman in 1967 in the summer. And then Senator Robert Kennedy took a group of interns to lunch, and he told us about the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, the public didn't know that the weapons in Cuba were fully operational, and field commanders had authority to launch. The public didn't know that there was a submarine that the Soviet Union had just off the coast of the United States, in which it was nuclear weapons deployed, and we dropped them depth charges, and one of the three, I think two of the three officers wanted to launch it, and one stopped them. So had we done what Curtis LeMay and the other military leaders wanted to do to invade Cuba, none of us would be here today. Had this one officer on the submarine who refused to launch in response to the threat to his submarine, we wouldn't be here today. So we came so much closer to ending the human blessing than the public really knows, or cares to know, it seems. So Bobby Kennedy told us how close well, at that time, they didn't even know how close we'd actually come. It was only later that we discovered that the weapons were operational. But he knew how hazardous it was, and that he said it was only good luck that saved us. And I'll never forget, he said, nuclear weapons are the moral and practical litmus test of modernity. If we get every other issue right and don't get this right, it won't matter. And that stayed with me from that moment. And I couldn't really do anything about it until many decades later. I didn't have the skills. I mean, of course, I went to marches and all that stuff, but I wasn't able to do anything meaningful until I became a lawyer. And then I was involved in an initiative to bring lawyers from the then Soviet Union to the United States and show them our court system, our system of checks and balances, juries. It blew their mind that citizens could administrate justice. Bankruptcy court, the idea that debtors could seek relief from the rapacious banks from the state. The state would allow you to recoup and revise your life and not be destroyed. But what really I know hit them was there was a judge in Philadelphia holding the city of Philadelphia in contempt of court for overcrowding of prisons, and the idea that a court could hold the state to the rule of law really affected them. And those lawyers became very strong advocates of glasnost and perestroika, or change, and from the oppressive communist regime they were living under. And the lawyers that we sent to the Soviet Union came back and reported that these were not demonic people; these are people, and that progress could be made. So it was very empowering. But it really began with that one testimony of one person that hit me, and I looked into it and I studied it, and then I realized that there are two arrogances that I don't think modernity can survive. They both relate to the arrogance of intellectual capacity. One is the belief that by weaponry and the advancing of technical means, we can solve problems amongst people. And that, in fact, the more the weapons are perfected, the less security we obtain. And nuclear weapons that we have today, the triggering devices are the size of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The destructive capacity and the amount of money spent, the trillions of dollars, the organizational capacity, the training to make people ready to use them is a highly immoral and irrational exercise, but it's very lucrative for some people. The other arrogance I don't think we can survive is the arrogance of the use of religious mythology. And I don't say mythology in a derogatory sense, because mythology is really valuable for describing the formless realm within, the archetypes and so forth. But the explanations of the great mystery from which we arise and to which we return, explanations that were given by great wise people for the purpose of improving our qualities, our capacity to love each other and live in justice and peace, but to use those explanations to divide people and to ultimately claim that your group's explanation and identity is so superior to others that you would kill over it. This is another aspect of extreme arrogance. And the two of them, in a way, are really worshiping the capacity of the intellect of the human being, and rather the mystery of the power that gives us life, which all of the great sages and prophets have described either as compassion or love.
Yeah, I mean, but a lot of things have changed over the 20 years, especially in terms of global security. What do you think are the most relevant changes for today as opposed to in the past that people should be aware of?
Well, one is that we now have the technical and organizational capacity to eliminate poverty. So this didn't exist before. We have discovered that if a mere 1% of the nuclear arsenal of the world was used, less than 150 weapons, that it would throw in excess of 5 million tons of soot into the stratosphere and end the agricultural base for all of humanity, so that the weapons have become increasingly unusable. We have discovered that that the economic system that we have incentivizes the destruction of the resources of the planet, that it's premised on perpetual growth, and that the planet is finite. And so the most salient notice that we've been put on of this fact comes from our abuse of fossil fuel, which if we continue to burn it and continue to melt the polar ice cap, we will throw off the pH of the oceans and put the phytoplankton at risk, which is 50 to 70% of our oxygen. We didn't know that 20 years ago. And we didn't really realize then our capacity to impair that system. We have been cutting down rainforests, the other part of our lungs, at an unsustainable rate. So anyone who thinks has come to realize that our economic engine is incentivizing behavior that will kill us. These are very salient facts that have become obvious in the last 20 years, a little bit longer. Also, there's no ideological divide in the world like there was during the Cold War. There's no reason for the barriers between nations in this endeavor, because the human security of the human family is only achievable beyond the confines of the nation state's preoccupation with militarism. What I mean is there's no military solution to the pandemic. Pandemics don't recognize borders. There's no military solution to protecting the climate. There's no military solution to the integrated financial system that we now live in. There's no military solution to cybersecurity. The phenomena that we're facing that really threaten us don't have military solutions, and that's more obvious than it's ever been. And the more we perfect our military means of pursuing international security, the less security we're getting. Moreover, there's a great violation of the golden rule, the idea that 9 countries would say that we can have these massive weapons of mass destruction and others can't. Just imagine if the Biological Weapons Convention said no country can use smallpox or polio as a weapon, but we'll let 9 countries use the plague as a weapon. You immediately know it would be unsustainable because it's immoral. It violates the golden rule. It violates the principle of equity, the equality of peoples. But moreover, I mean, it's outrageous to think that we would allow, say, a weapon like the plague to be used to pursue security, but nuclear weapons are far worse than the plague. So the idea that I'm in the United States, that we pledged around $1.9 trillion to modernize the arsenal, stimulating a new arms race all over the world, is simply immoral.
How real is the threat today of nuclear war?
Oh, it's more real than it's ever been. If a computer hacker were to create the illusion of an attack between India and Pakistan, they'd only have 300 seconds to decide whether it was a computer error. And there's been numerous. Give an example. 1995, Cold War's over. Weather satellite is sent off the coast of Norway up to the North Pole, and Norwegians tell the Russians that they're doing it, but it doesn't go up to command and control. And so Boris Yeltsin is told about this, and the first volley of a nuclear exchange would be a high altitude explosion to create a burn the electrical systems of the adversary country. And so he had 8 minutes to decide whether Russia, because the Soviet Union was over by then, whether Russia was under attack. He said that he didn't think Bill Clinton wanted to start a war. It was a very personal reason, but the information that he was getting was that Russia was under attack. It turned out that the satellite, of course, continued up to the North Pole, but its trajectory looked like it was going toward Moscow. That was in 95. So we came from minutes away from ending civilization. 1983, there was a fellow, Colonel Stanislav Petrov, and I recommend the movie about him called The Man Who Saved the World, was on watch of the computers in the Soviet Union, and they showed a full-scale American launch. And the reason that he didn't pass the information up the command and control, which would have launched 11,000 nuclear warheads and just pulverized the United States, was that he was a computer engineer and he knew they made mistakes, and he believed in God, and he didn't believe God wanted the world to end. And he told me that personally. So it was really God saved the world. In the United States, there was a training tape put in Cheyenne Mountain where they do the planning for this stuff, and to show a senator who was visiting how efficient we were, but the training tape lit up all over the country as if we were under attack. So it was, and we went on high alert. There was a computer chip put in one of our satellites that was unable to distinguish between a sunrise and missile launches, and it reported a full-scale Russian launch against us. So these things have been going on in numerous examples. I mean, there was a nuclear bomb dropped in the Carolinas in the United States. 6 out of 7 of the safety latches didn't work, and there was only one worked. Otherwise, it could have exploded.
It seems
I could go on all day about how close we've come, but today we're still fighting to have a no first use policy in the United States, something that we believe that Joe Biden has said the only use of nuclear weapons is to prevent them from being used, which means you don't use them first. But we're getting tremendous pushback from the military-industrial complex to change the policy from what it is now, that any number of reasons could be used to launch nuclear weapons, and we don't have a policy that we would not use them first. We have a policy that we threaten to use them every day, and to live under this threat to destroy the future, to me, is utterly irrational.
But so why is the general public, and especially the younger generations who we think are who definitely are our future, who we think are in touch with a lot of things, not talking more about the nuclear issue and not speaking out more strongly?
Well, I don't know. You'd have to ask the leaders who are so concerned about the climate, rightfully concerned about the climate. They understand that, and they've been very vocal about it. They've come out in the streets over social justice and addressing the cancer of racism, which is certainly laudable. Why they don't want to deal with the nuclear threat it doesn't make any sense to me. There's actually a Zoom right now on intergenerational addressing nuclear issues. But you're right. It's not. They don't know. They don't even know how many. I've given lots of lectures at universities, and uniformly, the students have no idea how many there are, why we have them, what they do. They don't know. They don't seem to want to know. It's not in the media. I mean, Donald Trump pledged $1.9 trillion to modernize the arsenal, and there was no discussion. There was no pushback. The last budget, the budget that Biden put forward, increased the military budget, and there was no public debate about it. It's largely a function of the foundations and the think tanks that are funded marginalize this issue. I think they've been compromised in their leadership, but there's, you don't see the Ford Foundation or MacArthur or Carnegie really funding disarmament. And that's odd because the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which has all but 4 countries in the world in it, including the United States, Russia, United Kingdom, France, and China, the countries, nuclear weapon states, has a pledge to negotiate the elimination of nuclear weapons. The International Court of Justice has unanimously ruled that there's a legal duty to get rid of them. And so there's a legal duty to get rid of them, and they confer an almost a mythical level of power on a small group of people. They don't want to give it up. And they have a number of major corporations, Lockheed, Boeing, Raytheon, et cetera, that are making not millions of dollars, billions and trillions of dollars in this venture. So there's a lot of lobbying and advocacy to keep it quiet. Keep it quiet. Things are okay. Don't worry about it.
I think I just want to remind our audience that they can put some questions in for us. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But one of the things I think is many people believe that the nuclear deterrence is a sort of peace strategy. That the countries would never do a nuclear be a first strike country if they realize that the enemy has weapons, and it would be counterproductive, would destroy their own country. So is that really a correct thinking, that this has created a sort of peace in the world because of many countries have nuclear weapons?
Well, it was interesting. Richard Nixon, who was instrumental in bringing the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty into force, and it's also interesting that Ronald Reagan was a nuclear weapons abolitionist and helped put in motion the reduction from over 65,000 to what we have now under 14,000. But Nixon also instituted the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, which was to ensure that that there would be mutual vulnerability. Exactly what you're saying, that there would be no incentive to strike first and win. And in fact, Reagan and Gorbachev announced that they understood that a nuclear war can never be won and therefore must never be fought. But the United States has abrogated the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, and we now are in fact trying to weaponize space, which is a pursuit of full spectrum dominance, a pursuit of being able to militarily dominate the planet. And the weapons that we have, intercontinental ballistic missile weapons in North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, a couple other states out west, they are first strike weapons because they would be the recipient of a first strike from another country. So if there's a notice that there's or a computer mistake, it looks like we're under attack, they would be launched. So they're very destabilizing and very dangerous. And they're only first strike weapons. So we have a first strike policy presently, and that's very dangerous and irresponsible. You're absolutely right. So there are many people in the military who, the doctrine of no first use says we will still maintain a sufficient arsenal to be a deterrent. That's the progress we're trying to get right now. Very modest, frankly, very modest, just really a threat reduction measure. That we would maintain a sufficient arsenal that nobody would want to attack us first. But the doctrine of deterrence is very dangerous because if it fails, everything's over. And the likelihood of human mechanical error or madness exists. And as long as it exists, these weapons are incompatible with a sustainable future. So how many weapons would a country have to deter, say, the United States from attacking them? Would we be willing to give up our 10 major cities? So if another country had 10 nuclear weapons and they could take out Chicago, Washington, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, would we give that up? And moreover, would we be able to contain the escalation? So how many weapons are needed to even have deterrence? So it's a very dangerous situation. But the problem is there are real problems the world faces today, like pandemics, like the climate, like stable financial systems, like cybersecurity, like ending terrorism. These are real issues that require global cooperation. And that cooperation is unlikely to occur with the institutionalization of adversity that nuclear weapons represent. They're a paradigm of fear. They're based on an ancient Roman adage: prepare for war, receive peace; prepare for peace, receive war. And the pursuit of peace through domination. And it didn't work in Vietnam, didn't work when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. The whole paradigm of militarism has been very unsuccessful. We spent over $2 trillion in Afghanistan, and a pittance on developing the society. The instances in which we put money into helping to develop the society proved to be very successful. But the military ventures proved to be a grave and serious failure. There's no military solution to Palestine, Israel, to Kashmir and India and Pakistan. There's no military solution to the droughts that are going to be coming and the floods that are going to be coming because of climate change. No, we need a new era of human cooperation. And it's really based on the spiritual principles that we share, Amartad, and the people listening share, which really boils down to the affirmation the human family is one. The quote from the Upanishads, it's over the parliament in India, they start reading it. It says the world is one family. Or the universal articulation of the golden rule in so many iterations. I love that when Jesus says that treat your neighbor as yourself, as the counterpart to loving God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your might. And neighborhood today is a moral location. It's not a physical location as it was then. But when Muhammad articulated the golden rule, Confucius articulated the golden rule, Seneca articulated the golden rule, Jesus articulated the golden rule, Hillel articulated it, Mahavir and Jainism, every major faith tradition has articulated it. It was purely horizontal. It didn't stretch into the future. But that's not true today. Today, because of science and technology, our impact on the future, our impact on future generations is certain. Moreover, our impact of activities in one part of the world affects the whole world. That wasn't true then. Neighborhood was a very local area. But today, the human family is one. And the activities we engage in impact the future as never before. That is unique. And what that has done is it's made the moral imperative of treating others as we want to be treated, other nations as we want our nation to be treated. The spiritual instruction to treat other lives as part of your own life, as you want to be treated with dignity and care, that spiritual insight has now become a practical necessity. That's new. That is our moment. That's what challenges us, that it's the convergence of both the spiritual and the practical.
That's why I get so excited about what we're doing and what you're saying, Jonathan, because this viewers on our what we call the consciousness community, what we want to change the world, and we have to work on changing ourselves. So what can you suggest that we can to deepen our own soul connection so that we can be better advocates for peace in the world?
I don't think you should ever think that your connection of your soul to realize the purpose of the human birth should be in order to do anything. It's the other way around. Everything else should be in order to improve the quality of your heart and your soul, because that's the eternal journey that every human being is enveloped in. And so that sovereign activity, the awakening of consciousness to the infinite love of the mystery that creates us, and the merging with the light of the illumination of the soul, with the infinite light that blesses us with life itself. That process of transcendence of attachment to the temporal and knowledge of and connectivity with the eternal is an activity that is sovereign and in and of itself of the highest value. The mystery that created us is described by the great sages either as compassion or love. That's our connection to source. So that is the sovereign activity. That's the reason for the other activities. That's the reason for the creation itself. Is the reason for humans being created is to know the creator. And of course, the creator is not a noun. A noun has a beginning or end. So it's beyond the confines of mind and desire, beyond the confines of conception. It's something that's realized in experience. So the pathway of that is discerning the things that keep us from realizing it, which are anger, falsehood, jealousy, pride, lust, dishonesty, arrogance, vanity, the things that reinforce the illusion of being separate from all life and separate from God. Those are illusory. The qualities that transcend egocentricity, compassion, love, peace, tranquility, justice. These qualities not only bring us together with one another, they bring us together with the source within ourselves. How perfect is that? How perfect that the most spiritually awakening dynamic within us would also be the most practical amongst us. And it's true for nations too. If you look at what happened after World War I, where vengeance was reaped upon the Germans in the form of reparations, and for which we were blessed with the chaos of Nazism, and compare that to the generosity and wisdom of the Marshall Plan, in which we built up the economies and political institutions of Germany and Japan, the vanquished, ending up with friends, partners, trading partners, democracies. You see that the pursuit of virtue is not naive or weak, but it's practical and builds strength. And it's true in our personal lives. So just think of this little thought experiment. Think tomorrow you're going to treat everyone you meet without any regard for their subjectivity, for their experience, for their qualities, for their dignity. And you're just going to use them for the most selfish ends that you have for yourself. And you will not restrain your lust, your anger, any of your qualities that are purely selfish in any degree whatsoever. Just imagine going through a day like that. And then imagine how you feel at the end of that day when you put your head on the pillow. Now, bear with me. Imagine another day in which you treat everybody with the kind of dignity and love and kindness that you want for yourself. And you do your best to realize that everyone is part of the same tree of life that you're but a leaf on as they are as well. That they're sustained by the same mysterious power that gives you life, and that just a few years earlier they were beautiful, innocent children, and soon they will be returning to the earth, just like you and I will. But while we're here, we can bring as much love and kindness and goodness and creativity and beauty into their world and your world at the same time. Now, imagine how you feel when you put your head on the pillow. So it's obvious that the application of the golden rule is manifestly practical to have a life of richness and value, and that the counterfactual of the extremities of selfishness and pride lead to a life of loneliness and despair. And those are the choices before us. It's not that complicated.
And so by having this attitude toward our neighbors, which are physical neighbors and world neighbors, this is going to help us make a difference in human security and peace. I always wonder what we can do to support more people on a worldwide level like you, so that you could be more successful or more
Oh, well, I mean, I'm president of an organization that's focused on these issues, Global Security Institute, and people can support us, no doubt. One of the programs we have is Parliamentarians for Nuclear Nonproliferation and Disarmament, and there's about 800 around the world, multi-party. Senator Ed Markey is one of our co-presidents in the U.S. Helen Clark was head of the United Nations Program for Development, Prime Minister of New Zealand was one of our co-presidents. I mean, it's a serious group, and of course we need funding. But I think more importantly is people need to feel empowered themselves. And a lot of these issues, there's things you can do yourself in your own consuming habits and your lifestyles and things that's well known. But what's not well known is the influence you can have in democracies of pressuring political candidates and leaders. And I think every one of them needs to be asked 3 questions. And by the way, I'm also the representative to the UN of the summits of the Nobel Peace Laureates. And at one of our summits, we wrote a request to the youth of the world and to everybody to ask their political candidates 3 questions. What are you doing to eliminate poverty? What are you doing to protect the climate? What are you doing to get rid of nuclear weapons? Now, every political people don't need. I mean, I have expertise in treaties and international law and and how to get rid of nuclear weapons, but everyone doesn't have to be an expert in knowing right from wrong. Anyone with common sense knows that it's wrong to destroy the climate of the planet. And now, poverty being something we can easily eliminate if we just took a mere pittance of what we spend on weaponry and devoted it to sustainable agriculture, we could eliminate poverty very quickly. So every political representative should be asked, not should we get rid of poverty, should we protect the climate, should we get rid of nuclear weapons, but what are you doing to do it? What are you doing to express these principles and values? And I think everybody should ask, all of us, we should be asking ourselves, have I found the highest love of which I'm capable? The highest connection with the source of life itself, which is the power of love. Have I found that within myself? What is preventing me? Why am I putting it off? Why do I still have resentment? Am I gonna deal with the resentment I have for X, Y, and Z the week before I die? A month before I die? A year before I die? Do you know when you're gonna die? Why are you putting it off? Today is the day to get rid of resentment. Today is the day for forgiveness. Today is the day to put love into action. Today is the day to find the deepest part within yourself and allow it, like a spring, to clean the dirt away and then flow. Today's the day to go deep within yourself and allow the heart to open. And then the only question is, how do I bring that love into action? I am not wise enough to tell anyone how they can do that. I am, however, experienced enough to know that if you go into the inner house of worship within yourself, whether you call it a mosque, a synagogue, a church, a pali, whatever you call it, go into that place of deep silence and quietude and just listen. You will be given the opportunity to put that loving kindness and compassion into action. That I guarantee. The work we have to do is to find that taproot, but that source will arrange things for it to become manifest if you do the work. And then the issue is surrendering things that are just not relevant to love, surrendering things that are petty and vain and useless, and focusing on enhancing your daily life with qualities that reinforce that connectivity. So you can do that in any human activity, whether you're a parent, a child, a teacher, a nurse, a lawyer, an artist, policeman. There's always going to be a way to bring into action the virtuous qualities and reject the things that degrade human dignity. That's given. The issue is, can we surrender enough with the faith that if we do go deep inside and allow that quality of loving kindness and compassion to flow within us, that things will work out? Well, I'm going to say that along with all the wise since time immemorial. Absolutely, yes. That's the good news of the gospel. That's the lesson that the wise have always said. Pursue those qualities as an end in itself. That is the highest good and the necessary good.
Thank you, Jonathan. That's such a well put way to explain what part of our most important part of our work can be. We didn't really have a questions, but we have one person who wants to have us a comment. And then after we finish with this, just to remind our audience, we're going to have a great meditation led by Jonathan and a few closing remarks. Oh, let's see what the comment was. I can barely see it here. Let's see if I can read it. Yes, it's a very short-term profit and power-driven thinking that has gone on in these major areas of our world that sadly are off limits to the real people, the genuine people who have answers and innovative ideas. So can you comment on this? Oh, everyone should drop the weapons, but there's no real trust or respect that's been developed between the leaders who are supposed to develop relationships with other leaders. Yeah, I mean, it comes back to our leaders are not accountable.
The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty has been an extremely successful treaty. When it was created in the 1960s, instituted first by Ireland and then adopted by Nixon's administration, brought it into force. Both the CIA and the KGB said that absent such constraints, there would be dozens of nuclear weapon states by the 1970s. There aren't, because the treaty stopped that from happening. Moreover, the treaty was indefinitely extended in 1995, premised on progress on banning nuclear testing. There's been a moratorium of nuclear testing since 1991. There have been a few rogue states, like North Korea has broken out of it. India and Pakistan were not in the treaty. They're one of 3 countries that were not in the treaty: India, Pakistan, and Israel. So there was no legal constraint for them, but the rest of the world has recognized it. There's 13 practical steps that the 191 nations have agreed to make the world safer. So there's a roadmap that the nations of the world have agreed to. The problem is that people don't vote on these issues. They vote on issues that are of much more provincial and less significance. And that's our job. We have to raise consciousness and make people aware. Just as one of the reasons why people have been able to be made aware of the issue of climate is that there's an economic engine to change. There's profits to be made. You know, one of the first really important environmental treaties was the Montreal Protocol to protect the ozone layer. And Ronald Reagan understood that he could privilege businesses to convert from the way in which we use refrigerants that was destroying the ozone layer to more productive ways that would also produce wealth. So there was an economic engine. There's an economic engine driving getting off of fossil fuel, and that's very good. But there's no short-term profits to be made in nuclear disarmament. That's one of the issues.
Yes.
But once people are seized, you know, in the 1980s, we really believed that Reagan was going to launch nuclear weapons. So we had over 1.5 million people in the streets in New York. And there were also foundations like the Ford Foundation and Carnegie Foundation that were helping to support disarmament. Today, we don't have that. We need it. We need a few billionaires and some foundations to step up, because that's what's needed. But every citizen should be pounding their political representatives and saying, what are your plans? Hold them to account. If you're doing that, I know that you know that you have an impact. If you're not doing it, try it, and you'll find out you do.
Yeah, I mean, we're really that close to a disaster, as you said before, and we're sort of.
Well, the disaster on the climate is happening. I've been up to Greenland and I've seen the melting of the polar ice cap. It is happening. And when you see the magnitude of the amount of water being poured into into our oceans and changing the Gulf Stream and possibly the pH of the oceans, you can't ignore it. It is happening, and look at Syria. The disruption in Syria came about because of the drought, the extended drought that they never had like that before, and it drove millions of young unemployed men into the cities, and that was something that was not sustainable. So you had the consequences been a civil war. Those are environmental catastrophes. Sub-Saharan Africa, we're seeing the problem with immigration on the borders of the United States and Europe because of the climate change. So this is happening now. I say you have to change the paradigm of how we look at security from fear, threat, violence, destruction to cooperation, law, reason, science. Science matters. Facts. Science is how we deal with the natural world. Spirituality is how we deal with the space in which we're one within ourselves. But science tells us how the natural world is. And the people who are denying it, this is evil. This is ignorance. This is dangerous because the gift of science is very real. And it tells us if we persist in burning fossil fuel, we're going to destroy civilization. But that's sort of abstract. What we're going to do in the short term is cause mothers to have to think which one of my children is going to get enough calories to live tomorrow and which one's going to die. They're going to be mothers with Sophie's choices, more and more of them. That's happening already. There's going to be more and more flooding, more and more suffering, more and more diseases, more and more pandemics, more and more insects and viruses and bacteria changing demographically. And this will cause more suffering. And if you care about the suffering of others, then you will care about these issues. To me, it comes together as follows. We have to cooperate. We can't cooperate if we're threatening annihilating each other as a way of pursuing security. It's utterly insane.
Thank you. We'll leave it there for now because we have no more.
We have a question.
Right.
Ashley says that there's a question.
Okay, one last question then. Do you have any thoughts on the recent?
Absolutely. General Miley last year to avoid use of our military and nuclear arsenal. Yeah, absolutely. The idea that one person can, as we speak, order the first use of nuclear weapons and precipitate the annihilation of civilization is insane. And General Miley was very right because he saw the instability of Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump helped stimulate an attempted destruction of the greatest democracy the world has ever seen on January 6th. I mean, this is clearly an attempt of a coup. And if it hadn't been for that one officer leading people up the stairs, had they gone into the House chambers and grabbed a couple of congressmen, Trump would have clearly declared martial law, and we wouldn't have this conversation today. We came very close. So if he's willing to destroy the principles of the peaceful transfer of power in our democracy, which is the very basis of our country, basis of our civilization, that we shift power based on the will of the people rather than the whim of the powerful. If he's willing to destroy that level of arrogance and insanity, couldn't he have sort of symbolically decided to launch a nuclear weapon? And General Miley making it clear that he felt that we were under such unstable circumstances that he had to do something to make sure that there was a stopgap? Absolutely. Moreover, it wasn't so irrational in the normal scheme of things, because we do have international humanitarian law that our militaries take seriously, which means you can't use weapons that, and the use of them are indiscriminate between the use for the destruction of civilians and military, that cause unnecessary suffering, that cause irreversible environmental damage. These things violate international humanitarian law, which we adhere to, at least in principle. Problem is that if it gets violated by the abuse of the use of nuclear weapons, there'll be no courts to litigate it in. That's the problem. As Albert Einstein said, we know how World War III will be fought, and we know how World War IV will be fought. World War IV would be fought with stones and sticks.
let's leave it there, if you don't mind, because I know you have another important engagement to do in a few minutes. I just want to remind all of our people watching that you can see all of our previous wisdom talks by going to sunseed.org/wisdom talks. And we're now going to be starting a wisdom talk every week for the next few weeks. So be sure you sign up for our contact list. Next week, Sunday, October 17th, we have two remarkable thought leaders exploring a very timely subject, which is staying awake in perilous times. Because if we're not awake to deal with these issues, who is going to be awake? And we have Sufi teacher Shams Karis and world environmentalist, activist, and Buddhist teacher Joanne Macy, who I'm sure you know quite well, Jonathan, or I assume you've crossed paths.
Terrific
And you won't
people.
miss that one. Sorry?
Terrific people.
Unbelievable,
Absolutely.
right?
Wonderful, wonderful friends. Yeah.
And wait, there's more. I'm very excited to announce that on October 24th, you can join us for a festive jamboree to celebrate the launching of a new movie, the sequel to the movie Sunseed. The journey is going to be on October 24th. We're going to have a crowdfunding kickoff to help us raise the funds we need to do the development. And the new movie is called Sunflower, because Sunseed, right? We want to know what happened to those seeds, right? It's flowered in the last 50 years, and this is what we're going to explore in the new movie. We want to not only take people like Jonathan who grew up in that era, and so to speak, it changed their life. So we want to see, did it mean anything having a spiritual teacher? Did it mean anything to take on this community and carry it into the world? Of course it does, and we want to follow examples, but we also want to bring in the thought leaders of today, some young people, some other people who are more mature, to wide range of all the religions and spiritual directions, because we are one. We have unity, and these messages we're going to put forth in our new movie. So please put that on your calendar. October 24th, we're going to kick off the new movie with this jamboree. And I guess last thing to say, I want to pass it back to Jonathan, who's going to lead us in some special meditation to put us in the right mood for the rest of our day, the rest of our life, of course. And be sure you join our mailing list so that you can be right in touch with everything going on. Jonathan, thank you. I'm going to turn it over now to you.
Well, we haven't talked much about wisdom in this talk. It's been mostly at the level of intellect. There are 7 levels of consciousness that the human being has. The first being the level of the 5 senses, which we'll begin reflecting on the nature of our own consciousness. So there's something in our eyes that sees. Can you see it? Does it have a form? Does it have a location? There's something in your ears that hears. Can you hear it? Can you find its location? Does it have a form? There's something in our nose that smells. Can you smell it? There's something in your mouth that tastes. Can you taste it? There's something in your hand that feels. Can you feel it? There's something inside of your being that knows. Can you know it? The self that is knowing. Does it have a form? Does it have a location? The next level of consciousness is awareness. So there's awareness, sense awareness of your buttocks on the seat. It's been there since you've been sitting. But now that you pay attention to it, you see that there's a level of consciousness that can determine what direction consciousness will be paid to. Where will you pay attention? Like turning the dial. And then there's intelligence that puts the massive amounts of information that the senses provide into an orderly system in which objects appear, in which space and time take on meaning, in which causality is understood, in which reason and symbolic processes arise, in which we can remember the past and anticipate the future, in which we develop an image of self as separate, and in which we think about what it is that's thinking. And then the next level is where the witness occurs, the witness that is watching all of consciousness. The alarm clock goes off while you're in bed, and that witness says, aha, this was the dream, and now we will enter the world. But it was awake during the dream, watching the dream, and awake, entering in the world. At that level of the witness, a tranquility can occur, a tranquility of just watching without judging, watching the phenomena of consciousness. And if it arises that the inquiry of who am I, whose consciousness is this, what is its nature, if that should arise, it will be given to you that the doorway to the next level called wisdom is through the qualities and the power, the secret power and grace inherent in love and compassion and peace. And abiding within those qualities, wisdom is a transformative level of consciousness, as uniquely distinct from intellect as intellect is from senses. And wisdom is that powerful consciousness able to know consciousness, to know source, to find virtue, goodness within oneself, and bring it into discerning action. Wisdom is that consciousness that can distinguish between the temporal and the permanent, between what passes and what's permanent. And it's able to find the luminosity of the soul. It can go places the intellect can't even imagine. Wisdom is silent and direct. It's without duality. The sixth level of consciousness is that consciousness that can go into the light of love itself and merge into that which doesn't change and receive the direct communion and yoga union with the reality of the oneness of life itself. And the seventh level of consciousness is the human in God and God in the human. So let's come to our senses and reflect on who gives the power of sight, who gives the power of taste, who gives the power of knowing, who gives us this breath. Is this breath not a great opportunity to realize gratitude? Is this breath not a great opportunity to affirm unity with all other breathing beings? Is this breath not a time to realize we are being breathed by a power beyond ourselves? Going deep into that feeling of gratitude and grace to allow the stillness and peace in the heart to abide in this breath. And in this breath. May those who have seen the shore beyond the veil reach their fullness and know that the human lives in God and God lives in the human. That we are one with the source of all and everything, and that it's revealed to the extent that we open our hearts to the fullness of unconditional perfect love. May all resentment and doubt and disease of the physical, spiritual, and emotional nature be laid aside, and allow the healing power of forgiveness, the healing power of compassion, the healing power of love to flow through us and make us fully human. All praises are to that source of all life itself, beyond name and form and mystery. All praises are to God. Amen.
Amen. Oh my God. Jonathan, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for all you're doing, all the seen and the unseen things, and for what you shared with us today.
Brother, it's an honor, and it's a great thing that you're doing to provide a place where goodness can be shared. What could be more valuable? Thank you so much for allowing me to share with our community.
The thanks and praise to the Almighty who brings us all together.
And our teachers who as you bring that out in your work, that we are a part of a transmission. I lived with a great Sufi master, Baba Muhayyiddin, who you couldn't get more humble than him, and you couldn't get above him either. But he was just totally devoted to the service of life itself, and that's what we've been given, and we're part of a chain that goes back to the very beginning.
Well, we're going to have you back again in December, and I hope we'll actually go more into your experiences with Guru Bawa, and of course in the new film. Hopefully this will be one of the major chapters. And to our friends at home, please tell everyone you know to go take a look at our Wisdom Talks. Go to sunseed.org/Wisdom Talks, and you can see replays of this program. And now every week until the end of the year, every Sunday, we're going to be having a Wisdom Talk. So you can tune in right here. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and subscribe on YouTube. And with your interactions, this is going to help grow our audience so that we can reach more people and have more great wisdom talks and help us move ahead to the sequel movie, Sunflower. I think that's what we want to say today. We're so fortunate to have Jonathan with us, and tune in next week and every Sunday, same time, same place. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good night, wherever you are around in the world. May the long time sun seed shine upon you. May you be blessed. Namaste. Shalom Aleichem. Assalamu alaikum. Jai Ram. Om. Namaste. Until our next meeting.